from a land once ruled by ancient civilizations to a nation that would rise as a global superpower. The story of the United States is not just history, it's the epic tale of struggle, freedom, and destiny. Long before the United States was born, this vast land was already alive with history. For thousands of years, Native American civilizations flourished here, building societies rich with culture, tradition, and innovation. The Iroquois in the Northeast developed political systems that inspired democratic ideas. The mound builders of the Mississippi left behind immense earthworks that still puzzle archaeologists today. The Pueblo people in the Southwest built sophisticated stone dwellings that still cling to canyon walls. To these nations, the land was sacred. Every river, mountain, and plain carried meaning. This was their world long before the first European ship appeared on the horizon. That moment came in 1492, when Christopher Columbus's voyage across the Atlantic ignited a wave of exploration and conquest. Soon, the Spanish spread across the south, the French claimed the north, and the English turned their eyes toward the east coast. In 1607, Jamestown was founded in Virginia, the first permanent English settlement in the New World. It was a brutal beginning. Hunger, disease, and conflict with native tribes nearly ended the colony, but resilience carried the settlers forward. A few years later, the Pilgrims landed at Plymouth, guided by dreams of religious freedom. More colonies followed, and over time, 13 distinct settlements stretched along the Atlantic coast. Life in the colonies was not easy. People endured harsh winters, rugged wilderness, and endless labor. Yet, hope for a better life pushed them on. Farmers worked the soil, merchants thrived in bustling ports, and communities grew. But under the surface, resentment toward the British Crown was growing. Taxes and restrictions from a faraway king felt unfair to a people who had carved out lives through sweat and sacrifice. The cry of no taxation without representation grew louder, and what began as protests soon ignited into open rebellion. The Boston Tea Party was a spark, the battles of Lexington and Concord a flame. Men and women who once saw themselves as subjects of Britain began to see themselves as Americans. Leaders like George Washington, Thomas Jefferson, and Benjamin Franklin emerged, voices of courage in a time of uncertainty. In 1776, these voices declared independence. The words of the Declaration thundered with hope. All men are created equal. It was a bold vision, imperfect and incomplete, but revolutionary in its time. The Revolutionary War tested the young nation's resolve. Farmers became soldiers, facing off against the most powerful army in the world. Victories were scarce, sacrifices immense, but determination carried them through. At Yorktown in 1781, British forces surrendered, and against all odds, the colonies had won. A new nation was born, the United States of America. Yet victory raised new questions. How should this fragile republic be governed? Fierce debates raged until 1787, when the Constitution was written. It created a system of checks and balances, a government built on the power of the people, and a promise of liberty. Though flawed and burdened with contradictions, it was a daring experiment in democracy. This was the foundation of a nation born in struggle, defined by ideals and destined to change the course of human history. The young United States had won its independence, but unity was fragile. As the 19th century unfolded, the nation expanded westward with an unstoppable drive. Fueled by a belief known as manifest destiny, the idea that America was destined to stretch from the Atlantic to the Pacific. Settlers, adventurers, and fortune seekers pushed into untamed lands, building towns and railroads, dreaming of new lives. Yet with each mile gained, deep divisions grew sharper. The issue of slavery loomed over every debate. In the South, an economy built on plantations and enslaved labor clashed with the North, where industry thrived and abolitionist voices grew louder. Every new state added to the Union sparked fiery arguments. Would it allow slavery or ban it? Compromises bought time, but they could not silence the growing storm. The Missouri Compromise, the Kansas-Nebraska Act, the Dred Scott decisional reminders that the nation was being pulled apart at its very core. Then came the election of Abraham Lincoln in 1860. To many in the South, his presidency threatened their way of life. One by one, states seceded from the Union, declaring independence and forming the Confederate States of America. The dream of unity had shattered. In April 1861, Confederate guns fired on Fort Sumter, and the Civil War began. It was the bloodiest conflict in American history. Brothers fought against brothers, neighbors against neighbors. Battles like Gettysburg, Antietam, and Shiloh turned fields into graveyards. The war was not only about preserving the Union, but about the soul of the nation itself. Lincoln, with his steady leadership and unshakable resolve, issued the Emancipation Proclamation in 1863, declaring enslaved people in Confederate states free. It transformed the war into a fight not only for unity but for freedom. After 4 years of unimaginable sacrifice, the Union emerged victorious in 1865. The Confederacy lay in ruins. Slavery was abolished, and the nation was whole again but scarred. Lincoln would not live to see the healing. Just days after victory, he was assassinated, leaving the country grieving and uncertain. Reconstruction began with hope, but soon faced bitter struggles. The 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendments promised freedom, citizenship, and voting rights to formerly enslaved people. Yet progress was met with resistance, violence, and the rise of segregation. The South was devastated economically, cities in ruins, and trust between North and South nearly impossible to rebuild. Despite efforts, Reconstruction faltered, leaving behind divisions that would echo for generations. Still, the seeds of transformation had been planted. The Civil War redefined the nation's identity. It proved that the Union was not a fragile experiment, but a permanent force. It declared that liberty must expand, even if the road was painful and incomplete. Out of blood and struggle, the United States took its first steps toward becoming a truly united nation. The late 19th century marked a transformation unlike anything the United States had ever seen. Out of the ashes of war, a new nation rose, one powered by innovation, ambition, and relentless growth. Factories hummed with machinery, railroads stretched across the continent, and cities began to climb skyward with steel and glass. It was the age of industry, and America was determined to lead it. Inventors and entrepreneurs became the new pioneers. Thomas Edison lit up homes with electricity. Alexander Graham Bell connected voices across miles with the telephone, and Henry Ford revolutionized transportation with the assembly line. Names like Carnegie, Rockefeller, and Vanderbilt built empires of steel, oil, and railroads, amassing fortunes so vast that they reshaped the nation itself. To many, this was the land of opportunity, a place where anyone could rise from nothing to greatness. To others, it was the Gilded Age era of wealth and glamour, masking the struggles of workers who toiled in dangerous factories and crowded cities. Immigrants arrived by the millions, passing through Ellis Island in search of a better life. They brought with them cultures, traditions, and dreams that would weave into the fabric of America. But their journey was not easy. They faced long hours, low wages, and discrimination, yet they helped build the bridges, lay the tracks, and raise the skyscrapers that defined the new American landscape. As the nation grew stronger at home, it also began to look outward. The Spanish-American War of 1898 marked a turning point. In just a few months, the United States defeated Spain, gaining territories like Puerto Rico, Guam, and the Philippines. America had announced itself as a world power, no longer content to stand on the sidelines. The early 20th century brought both triumph and turmoil. Cities pulsed with energy, jazz and cinema shaped culture, and the promise of the American dream drew people forward. But challenges loomed. Corruption in politics, unsafe working conditions, and vast inequality led to demands for change. The progressive era fought for reforms, giving workers' rights, women the vote, and government greater accountability. Then, in 1917, the United States entered World War I. Soldiers crossed the Atlantic, joining allies in a brutal conflict that reshaped the world. When the war ended, America stood tall, its influence undeniable. Yet prosperity was followed by hardship. The Roaring Twenties brought jazz, speaking, and booming markets, but in 1929 the stock market crashed, plunging the nation into the Great Depression. Breadlines, unemployment, and despair spread across the land, testing the resilience of the American spirit. Through struggle, leadership emerged. Franklin D. Roosevelt's New Deal sought to rebuild hope, reform systems, and restore stability. And just as recovery began, another storm gathered, the rise of global conflict that would once again pull America onto the world stage. From factories to battlefields, from skyscrapers to farms, this was the period when the United States grew, from a divided nation into a global power, laying the foundation for the modern era. The mid-20th century thrust America into a new and uncertain world. World War II had ended with the United States emerging as a global superpower. But victory carried new responsibilities and new rivalries. The Cold War soon divided the globe into two competing visions: democracy versus communism, freedom versus control. The US and the Soviet Union entered a dangerous dance of power, with nuclear weapons hanging like a shadow over the entire planet. At home, America was undergoing its own transformation. Suburbs grew, highways stretched across the nation, and a culture of prosperity defined the 1950s. Yet beneath the surface, cracks appeared. Millions of African Americans, long denied their basic rights, demanded equality. From Montgomery to Washington, voices rose. Rosa Parks refusing to give up her seat, Martin Luther King Jr. declaring his dream. The civil rights movement became one of the defining battles of the century, changing laws and reshaping the conscience of the nation. The 1960s and 70s brought turbulence. The assassination of leaders left the country in mourning, while protests against the Vietnam War divided generations. The struggle for women's rights, Native American rights, and LGBTQ+ rights added to the momentum of change. America was searching for its identity in a rapidly shifting world, and every victory came with sacrifice. Technology began to accelerate the pace of progress. In 1969, the world watched in awe as American astronauts set foot on the moon, a symbol of ambition and innovation. Computers began to emerge, paving the way for a future no one could fully imagine. By the late 20th century, America had become the cultural epicenter of the globe. Hollywood movies, rock and roll, fast food, and the internet all spreading its influence worldwide. The 21st century arrived with new challenges. On September 11th, 2001, tragedy struck when terrorists attacked the World Trade Center and the Pentagon. Nearly 3,000 lives were lost, and the nation was forever changed. America entered wars in Afghanistan and Iraq, confronting enemies abroad while facing debates at home over security, freedom, and identity. Yet even in the face of crisis, America's story continued to evolve. Technology exploded with smartphones, social media, and artificial intelligence reshaping daily life. Voices once silenced grew louder, demanding justice, reform, and recognition in a society that prided itself on liberty and equality. America's journey into the modern era has been one of contradiction, of triumph and tragedy, unity and division, progress and struggle. From its foundations to the present, the United States remains a nation defined not just by its history, but by its unshakable spirit. A land of dreamers, fighters, and innovators,